Yo, what is up guys, Grimro here, and today we're going to do another Atlas guide video. And I wanted to share with you my strategy I've been using lately. It's a little bit late, but it's farming up Exalted Orbs in the map Arcade, specifically Shaped Arcade. So we're going to go into a few things, but first of all I want to show you guys the layout, kind of give you an idea of what the map feels like to run, and give you a bit of an idea of which build I would recommend doing on it. So we'll jump straight into a map here and we'll take a look. So we'll be running these without sextants, obviously with one-man loot, and that is what you guys can expect. So to begin with, you'll jump into the map, and what I always do is I find the edge of the map and I run straight along it. This is going to be the main thing you do on this map. Sometimes I'll jump in the middle here, just because I see a big pack, but for the most part, you want to just run across the edge of it. Just like this. So you'll notice there's a lot of buildings around here and there's quite a few things that you can run into. Now, it's probably not the most ideal map for shield charge. You're probably going to find other better maps for shield charge, but for running builds which use Queen of the Forest and stuff like that, it is just fine. However, I would take note if I was you that hold on, we'll just talk about the boss here. So you got the boss here. It's very, very easy to kill. It's one of the easiest bosses in the game, in my opinion, and there's two of them as well. So that's going to come into play when we roll the maps. Similar to Shaped Graveyard, you want to be varling all your maps unless you're using a Zana mod. So you'll be able to do that, and you'll be able to basically pay for your Varl orbs for free with those fragments that drop. You'll be able to sell those to other players, or you can just decide to put them in to your own maps and get that increased quantity. But yeah, we'll be volleying all our maps for increased quantity and all that stuff, and we'll be able to get 2 chances at sack frags. So yeah, back to the projectile thing here. You probably don't want to be just filling in the middle of the map here, you can see, but we've just gone around the edges and we've got 11 monsters remaining. But as you can see here, with these buildings, specifically in little kind of areas like this, you don't want to be playing a projectile based build like Freeze Pulse or Spark, because if you go straight up to one of these walls and you clip it, none of your projectiles will come out at all. So you can be kind of a bit in danger there, especially if you're playing hardcore. Indoor maps or maps with a lot of geometry like this are a little bit difficult for those types of builds. So probably play something which can deal with open layouts, but also can walk in between these kind of difficult to move in between structures, and you'll be pretty good to go. So that's the layout, guys. Nice and simple. Up, around, hit the boss, come back down the other side of the wall, and fill in a few bits in the middle, and you should be pretty good to go. So next up, let's talk about loot. So there's only one really big thing about this map which you want to be looking at, and that is the Exalted Orb Divination card. Here it is here. This is the Saint's Treasure. So this divination card is kind of rare. It's kind of the middle ground. So when I run Arcade, the reason I run it over something like Burial Chambers, which is easily the most profitable map in the game, is because I hate RNG. I'm a pretty passionate hater of it, so whenever I can get the opportunity to do something which requires less RNG, I take it. So you've got a super duper RNG heavy map like Burial Chambers, where you could get a card in 10 maps or 1000 maps, with the average being 300 to 500 maps per divination card, or you can run this map here and get a lot more frequent drops. The percentage chance of getting the divination card is much higher, but your overall profits, if you actually did 1000 maps and got the average, will be lower. So just to give you guys a bit of a comparison, what I did was I ran some of these maps. Sample size is fairly small here, so don't be drawing too many conclusions. This was done with 4 white sextants and with another team member. So this was a 2-man loot with 4 sextants. So we ran 72 maps. 2 of them had monstrous treasure on them, and we got 14 Saints Treasures divination cards. So that's a pretty decent indicator of what you might be looking at. Obviously, we invested in a couple of these maps a little bit more than usual, but hopefully this is at least a bit of an indicator of kind of what you may be expecting to get, especially if you're in a 6-man group or something like that. So how I would rate it, it's probably about as rare or maybe a little bit more common than the Combs divination card from Volcano, and definitely a little bit more common than the Wind card from Atoll or Jungle Valley, in my opinion. That, coupled with the nice layout, means that loot is quite nice in Arcade, but one thing to consider is the price of the Exalted Orb. So Exalted Orbs were, at a time when I was farming this, very, very expensive. They were about 150 Chaos each, and they have since crashed a little bit, quite down to earth here at 104, but that still makes each divination card worth about 20 Chaos, so when you get one of those, it's definitely a pretty hyped up moment. But yeah, definitely when you're farming this, look at the price of the Exalted Orb. It's going to be very important to check that out. So let's move on to the next point here. We're going to look at how to set up our Atlas for Arcade. So once you set up your Atlas for Arcade, you're going to have no problems at all sustaining it. I'll show you guys how many I have here. Oh, that's the wrong tab. We have quite a few here, and I don't really have that much time to play right now, so it's going to be very easy for you to sustain. And if people want to sell maps, you can sell them. And another cool trick you can do is pick any tier 7 or 6 map, and you can kind of uncomplete maps based on that as well, and sell those maps on. So I did Pen, because a lot of people are trying to farm the Bisco's card, and I sell these for 1 Vals each, and I did a lot of them. So yeah, you can definitely mix in a few strategies there. And now I just wanted to tell you before we get into setting up the Atlas is why I went with Shaped Arcade over White Arcades. So as you can see here on the Atlas, it has only one connector, which is Courthouse, and that is a very good thing. So if you wanted to run white maps, you could do so. However, I would recommend doing yellow maps if you can. You'll have the opportunity to drop yellow sextants, which right now are quite expensive, and you can sell them since you don't need any for your strategy. You have 4 whites here, so you can sell them for more currency gains. You also have access to, I believe, Putrid Cloistered map drops and Poor Joy's Asylum map drops, and they drop quite a bit often off of Alva because she has a lot of increased armority. So I believe that shaped maps are the way to go, and you also have the opportunity to sell those tier 7 maps. Feel free to go for tier 3s if you can't handle the tier 8s, but yeah, tier 8 is definitely, in my opinion, better. So let's go over the Atlas setup now. So here's Arcade down here. Arcade, when it is shaped, is a tier 8 map. So what we want to be doing, as always, is taking off all the tier 7 maps on the Atlas, sorry, not tier 7, tier 8 maps on the Atlas, which we've done here. So you want to take off Armory, Overgrown Ruin, all that good stuff, and all the tier 9s. Then all you have to do is shape up Arcade, and you're pretty much set on your way. And that'll allow you to sustain infinitely on Arcade with no problems at all. You don't even need to sextant, chisel, or anything like that. You will be able to sustain no problem as long as you have a decent Atlas bonus of around 70 to 80. Obviously, the higher you get, the more maps you will have. Make sure you don't shape up any tier 9s or 8s other than Arcade, because that will mess with your sustain strategy. As I said before, if you want to pick a different tier 7 map, if you want to try and sell it, you can also remove all the tier 7s bar 1 and shape it up. And then you will be good to go on generating a few of those as well to sell. So that's going to be how you set up the Atlas. Now I want to talk a little bit about influence, because I've tried to play around with it on Arcade because I thought it'd be pretty juicy, and I'm going to talk briefly about that now. For some reason, this area of the Atlas, when you try and spawn Elder in and have a bit of an Elder square or bubble going, it doesn't sustain itself. For some reason, Elder will quickly die within 10 to 20 maps and just shrivel up into a little small area, and you'll either have to save him and spread him out again, which will take up a lot of your time, or you'll just have to let him die and he will naturally die. I've done it about 5 or 6 times now, and he's died every time after about 10 to 20 maps. So for some reason, I'm not sure if it's the positioning and how the maps are lined up here, but he just always doesn't seem to like to stick around. I think it's because Arcade is in such a central spot to this corner, so it basically kills him off. Even so, you'd have to kind of spread it around here in this corner, but I just haven't been able to get it to work. Maybe you guys can crack it, but it hasn't been too good for me. And in addition to that, it does slow down maps quite a lot when you get a Shaper Boss mod. It'll like take about 10 or 15 seconds off your map, which you could have been spent doing more maps. So that's going to be the kind of the setup, but I do want to quickly talk another thing about Arcade, and that is the sextants. So we can see here we have 4 white sextant locations. This is a very big deal. Having 4 sextants on a map is already big, and then having them all be white is also very big. On top of the good layout and on top of the good divination card makes Arcade a dream to run. Not having to worry about buying any other sextant type except white, and having the maximum amount of juice on there after you get your Elder Orb and all the reds complete is very, very nice. It allows you to sell all of your yellow sextants to other players at an insane premium because they're so demanded right now, and you're going to have a good time. So one final thing I wanted to talk about is the possibility of Zana. So if we jump back in over here to our spreadsheet, I believe two of these Saints treasures both dropped exclusively in breaches. So I'm not sure how good breach is specifically, but I will put it out there that we got 2 of the 14 just from sextant breaches. So that might be an indication that breaches might be still worth it on maps like this with such a common divination card in terms of rarity compared to the Doctor. Throwing it on there will give you splinters, which are worth currency, more currency drops, and more Exalted Orb drops. So it's going to be a bit of a decision whether you guys want to vol your maps for the fragments and the consistency there, and maybe a bit of increased pack size and more sextant modifiers, or if you guys want to invest in breach and try and get those cards that way. It's definitely going to be a bit of an interesting one, but you guys can figure that one out on your own. That's going to be the video, guys. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed and you can get a bit of currency out of Arcade. I've enjoyed running it. Definitely something I'll be looking at doing next league as well if Exalted Orbs are still expensive. But yeah, it's a good different alternative to Burial Chambers as long as Exalted Orbs are expensive. So feel free to check it out, guys. Another video coming up today, guaranteed. Got a few things to talk about, so check that out, guys. Thanks like always for supporting me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.